Hello everyone, Nigat here, and welcome to another match of LittleWarGame. Today I am bringing you a game that was played on Sylvan Charm between redDain, playing with the red pieces in the top left corner, versus his opponent, ConsciouslyEating, playing with the blue pieces on the bottom right corner of Sylvan Charm. Do see that both players are opening with a regular house, and we'll go ahead and catch up with them to see what their openings were. So let's talk about this game. Where did I find it? ConsciouslyEating posted this replay on the Discord, the replay Discord, and I thought these are two names that I don't know if I've actually featured on this channel before, and so I thought I'd look at their games, see how they're playing. ConsciouslyEating has a YouTube channel where he posts LittleWarGame content, and redDain also has not a YouTube channel but a Twitch stream, a Twitch account, where he plays LittleWarGame whenever I believe whenever he streams he plays LittleWarGame. So both of them really good players. I remember when redDain initially broke into the LittleWarGame community that very many people were talking about him. A very high level player, so it'll be very good to see how he's played. And then ConsciouslyEating also putting in the work to play the game and to get better at it. So both really good players. Honestly, I don't know either of their skill level or their play style. I've literally I've not seen ConsciouslyEating play like any games in probably the past month, honestly. I just haven't seen many of his replays, nor have I played against him recently. Likewise with redDain. Again, a very good LittleWarGame player, just haven't seen him play recently either. So I'm very curious to see how these guys do against each other and the kind of openings that they go for. So both went barracks, or racks, yeah, barracks. Both of them are going for raiders, except ConsciouslyEating went for a one raider expand, it looks like. Yeah, one raider expand, where redDain decided to go for two raiders before he went for that expand. Funny enough, both of their castles are going down almost at the exact same time, which means that ConsciouslyEating is a little bit late when it comes down to placing that castle, which is unfortunate because a lot of your eco advantage comes from getting that castle down just a little bit sooner. I actually think I know what happened. ConsciouslyEating built one extra worker than you typically do on this this opening. ConsciouslyEating should have about 11 workers. Oh, he has 13. Whoa, so a lot more workers. Whereas redDain has just 11 and started to build workers now that he's getting archers. Okay, so ConsciouslyEating will probably have the unit advantage, and then he goes for a workshop here. So it looks like ConsciouslyEating is going for a barracks mech hybrid. I do want to see what his follow-up is, whether he gets an advanced workshop or if he just decides to stay on this hybrid build. Typically, if we see an advanced workshop, we'll know that it's going to be a more mech focused style because you're going to try to do some counter drops. If you go for mech focused, ooh, ConsciouslyEating with some good micro there, getting some advantageous damage on that raider. And I think, oh yes, redDain going for another barracks. He's actually hidden it at the back of his base. I'm very curious to see if redDain has any intentions with maybe some mind games, if that's the reason why he hid that base. Or if he hit that barracks there. Typically we see a third base coming up around the 4-minute mark on both of these maps, but ConsciouslyEating building that catapult, building a house, making sure that he's not going to get supply blocked. Will he build an advanced workshop? That is the question. At the same time, redDain getting the drop on this raider here, blinking forward, getting that damage down. And again, we do see the advanced workshop a little bit late. You typically want to get the advanced workshop by the time this finishes, I believe. So be interesting to see that timing, how it goes. A little bit of lag. It's very funny when we receive a little bit of lag even though this is a replay. So the game is not live, it is a replay. redDain deciding to go for a third castle and pushing onto the other side of the map with 2 racks. So going for basically like a 2 racks pressure push with full archers. The interesting thing with maps like Sylvan is that it's large. It's so large to the point where pushing onto the other side of the map can take a long amount of time, and so that allows your opponent space and time to prepare for these pushes. So for instance, when he started the push, Consciously Eating only had 1 catapult ready for the defense, but now he has 2. Archer's doing a little bit of damage. We're going to go ahead and take a look at Consciously Eating's vision. Does see the archers. Catapults are in range of these archers here. Consciously Eating getting a workshop of his own. No. The redDain, apologies. Getting a workshop of his own. Consciously Eating going for that airship here. Player in the red. He's going to be able to scout out exactly what Consciously Eating is going for. He's going to see the third base. He has not yet seen the advanced workshop. He really needs to see that. He really does need to see that, but he hasn't. Consciously Eating doing a really good job of keeping this hidden. I think it was on the fringes of redDain's vision. It really was. If redDain had moved around the base, he would have seen that a lot better. So Consciously Eating moving to the other side of the map with 2 catapults as well as a worker. Probably dropping around this area, try to get some damage on those workers. There are a lot of archers in redDain's area here. Does not expect any drops. When Consciously Eating does finally make this drop, it's going to be a big event. Both players going for workers. Let's take a look at the worker count. Both even on workers. redDain with a lot more archers. Consciously Eating. Let's go ahead and see how this drop goes, and then we need to see the response. So drops the worker, drops the catapult. We need to see the response from redDain. Immediately pulls away, which is the response. So pulling your workers away from the gold mine so that the catapults don't do damage onto this. At the same time, Consciously Eating deciding to follow this up with a fortress to get some dragons out. Consciously Eating dropping these catapults on the edge of the map here. Does not see that this tower is going up. It's right out of vision. Will see it now. redDain having to respond to this. He will have to respond. Sending archers to deal with the catapult drops. Needs to make sure that these archers stay alive. Consciously Eating looks like he's just going to drop back down here and do some harassment. redDain responding by sending his archers over, so this drop will most likely get shut down now. This area will always be vulnerable to a drop, especially if Consciously Eating decides to drop some catapults. Consciously Eating microing this airship to drop his catapults against the chasing army here. And we do see that fortress I mentioned earlier is finishing up. Consciously Eating going into double upgrades here with the animal testing labs. It looks like he's going to try to transition into a pure beast style, especially if he has the double upgrade ends going. He's even floating a considerable amount of gold. Actually, both of them considerably. redDain having to build 2 houses. He's also getting additional racks, which is nice. It means that you're going for a racks play. 2 dragon layers dropping, as well as double attack upgrades for the beast starting up immediately as well. I want to go ahead and check workers again. Both players on 30 workers. redDain, I believe, hadn't lost any workers in that drop. No, he did not. Both of them actually entirely even in terms of resources lost and gained. Again, another catapult drop by Consciously Eating. He's definitely going to want to... Oh, looks like there's only 1 catapult in this drop. I think he forgot... oh no, there are 2. Just one was hidden behind this workshop over here. redDain losing 3 workers, but is able to respond and thus defends the drop. Again, dragons coming up. Consciously Eating floating about 1,000 gold almost. I'd love to see him just focus on the macro, just try to spend all that gold as quickly as you possibly can. Yeah, is it going to be officially floating 1,000 gold? Whereas if he was putting that gold to use, he would be so far ahead. He'd probably have this 4th base up. He'd probably have close to 60 extra supply, where he was just waiting on these dragons to finish up, and that's kind of where he wants a lot of his gold to go. redDain keeping his gold a little bit lower, but he was supply blocked. We do see that he has a house that's about to be finished up, but he does need to continue to get houses. Hey, I was mentioning earlier that this place would be very vulnerable to catapult drops. redDain having an archer in this area to make sure that he's going to be safe. He's going to be able to get that ping on the map. Kind of looks like this on the map whenever you take damage. And he's able to recover. I'd love to see him use this airship that he just got to ferry his ballista around, and it'll just be a little bit easier to deal with these drops in that regard. redDain going for a drop of his own. ConsciouslyEating's dragons here are going to be able to stop that from occurring. Looks like redDain has decided that he is just going to sack these catapults here in favor of doing some worker damage. Now that these workers are attacking these catapults, I'd love to see them target fire this mineral line over here, this gold line over there. But alas, we do see that redDain does lose those catapults. Still at 100 supply, 107 versus ConsciouslyEating's 87 supply. Airship moving around. Is he going to pick up those ballista and move them around? I really hope so. We do see additional production here. We even see some armories coming down. So remember, redDain is on 4 racks. We can actually know this for sure in the buildings tab. 4 racks, 1 workshop. He's been producing quite consistently, and now he is going for a 4th base, whereas ConsciouslyEating has been just sticking to 3 base. He has been spending a lot of his money now. A lot of those attack upgrades have been finishing up, but unfortunately they're still queued. This one hasn't even started yet, but it's in queue. So he's still floating a lot of gold, but making good moves here. Making good moves. He has control over this ramp with catapults versus a very vulnerable Rax army. redDain went for a lot of archers. Ooh, nice to see redDain. Uh-oh. Is he hurting his own? No. Is he hitting his own workers? Why did he pick them up? I'm so confused. I think redDain is a little bit confused as well, but he's going to recover here. Again, so he really wanted this castle. Typically what we see for the 4th castle is this one right here, because it's right next to your ramp, and this allows you to defend your 2nd and basically all the entrances pretty consistently. redDain just trying to keep control over this area. I don't think his vision is too good. No, he's kind of just trying to stay safe at home, whereas ConsciouslyEating, if we take a look at his vision on the mini-map, he's got this area covered, he's got dragons to flank, and again, moving up this ramp is going to be, we definitely don't want to see ConsciouslyEating move up this ramp. ConsciouslyEating does have vision because of these dragons, but once ConsciouslyEating loses vision over this ramp, these catapults are going to be useless, and this is exactly what I was mentioning. These catapults are going to be useless. It needs to pull these back, and a lot of them just go down straight away because of the way that redDain was able to use that vision. I think ConsciouslyEating needed to keep his dragons in the fight, even though redDain did double drop these ballista here. I think if it was me, I would probably just say, hey, I have to sacrifice some dragons just to make sure that my catapults will get the right amount of damage in. We do see that ConsciouslyEating is going to move forward with these dragons, does pull some of these back, targets the watchtower. redDain responds by repairing the watchtower up, and these dragons are 100% going to be able to kill the watchtower here. The 2nd watchtower will give these workers time to retreat so that they don't die necessarily. redDain responding. He's getting a 4th base up, a 5th base up rather, responding by sending these ballista over. That black powder upgrade is up, so he will be able to do some area of effect damage. Again, dropping the ballista. area of effect damage, which is good to see. redDain moving onto the map, trying to get some map control. Consciously Eating would benefit from some map control, but struggling just a little bit with the macro side of things. Doing really good with controlling these dragons, trying to get as much damage in as possible, but again, just suffering a little bit from the macro side. So he's spending a lot of his macro on this tech, a lot of his gold on the upgrades for the dragons themselves, and then this werewolf den. So Consciously Eating going for a very specific beast style. Very interesting, right? Because he started off with the racks, but now he's going for beast. And Consciously Eating is going to be able to see that these units are here. If he's looking at his mini-map, he should be able to... Actually, I don't know if he would be able to spot this, but hopefully he is going to have the awareness to know that something is going on this side of the map. Dragons do approach. Ooh, a little bit of a jittery from these soldiers. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. I think maybe they're on attack move, but they don't know what to move. Consciously Eating another catapult drop he's going for here. redDain with the worker. Looks like he wanted to put something here so that he could scout out. Actually, if Consciously Eating put this catapult drop over in this location, a lot of redDain's workers at the 5th base would go down. Do you see a little bit of lag? That's because there is a lot going on at the same time. Dragons being pulled back, redDain trying to kite back, keeping these workers alive. Consciously Eating finding a lack of defense in redDain's position. Ballista will target the airship and kill the airship. redDain needs to make sure to send those workers to finish off the rest of those catapults pretty soon here. Looks like redDain also is trying to ferry over some units using this one airship. Would love to see additional airships in the production. redDain putting these units on auto repair is going to see probably these workers die. Really hope he starts microing this at home. Looks like he is, but he has moved these guys on attack command, but they're also set to auto repair, and auto repair takes the priority. So he kind of needs to take a second to make sure that's being microed correctly, or else a third of his economy is not going to be going, or is not going to be working. Priority on the fight, so redDain is prioritizing killing this 3rd base of Consciously Eating, making sure that nothing is producing there. Does he eventually get it? No, he does not. He's also sieging down the 2nd base of Consciously Eating. He's going to be aware of this. Consciously Eating's 1st base finally goes down. He does decide to get a 4th base in this location. Very hard to defend, though, because of the route you have to go on to get there. Dragons at Consciously Eating's 5th base, no defense in play, and he's kind of just losing control of everything that's going on around the map, redDain. Despite Consciously Eating floating so much gold, Consciously Eating is going to lose another base, but this is doing way more damage than it was supposed to do. Some units at home not being rallied correctly, a lot of units in redDain's base, and now the dragons are going to be approaching. So it just comedy of errors a little bit with these dragons. redDain needs the ballista to be defending these catapults, and once these catapults die, archers are not going to cut it against werewolves. It's going to be catapults that want to do the bulk of the damage here. So werewolves do force the archers away. Again, more ballista. We actually need more ballista in production. Well, we actually have probably all the ballista we need, considering that redDain has 3 ballista now. It just needs to be here. And again, this catapult drop doing way more damage than it's supposed to. If redDain had a moment to just breathe and reprieve himself, to absorb what's going on, but he doesn't have the time. He's got to be able to focus down these dragons, and he does. Okay, he is gonna drop them. Good. He has a 2nd ballista. He could drop at any time, but it looks like he wants to continue the push. More werewolves in production. Continues the push. Let's go ahead and take a look at production. So redDain is not producing anything at the moment. I think he's just considering his state, and he's gonna go all in, especially considering how much damage these catapults were able to get. probably around 10 kills per catapult. Well, maybe not 10 kills, but per catapult, but a good amount, is able to finally deal with that. redDain definitely needs to send some workers over to this third base location because it's still got 3,000 gold on it, which is a lot. In the meantime, actually, let's take a look at the worker count. So 12 workers for Dan, whereas ConsciouslyEating has 22. So redDain, ConsciouslyEating needs to shut down some of these bases. It looks like it's just this base that's mining. So we need to take a look at the income, don't we? T for income. Okay, so ConsciouslyEating, even though all of his workers are primarily on this one, as well as a few on this one, he is incoming about 700 gold, whereas his opponent redDain is incoming only like 400 gold. It's growing as redDain is building more workers. He actually needs to build more workers. Do have a little bit of a lag just because of how much is going on in this game. Perhaps maybe running too many tabs in the background as well. But hopefully that should settle very soon. redDain being chased by these werewolves, ConsciouslyEating, tracking them down. We do see that, yeah, these werewolves are just going to be able to target down these ballista. It looks like that's what he's trying to do. So if these werewolves kill that remaining ballista, these dragons will have free reign to move in and out against this army. This werewolf just going for that ballista, as I mentioned. redDain picking up the ballista. A lot of the damage is now going on the werewolf. Archers will be able to repel these dragons as well as the airship with the remaining ballista in them. redDain deciding to go for a soldier drop. ConsciouslyEating close to losing a dragon for free right there. Because the soldiers are no longer with the army here, these werewolves are able to approach these archers. Archers have nothing to defend them, or at least serve as a barrier of defense. Whereas the soldiers are getting eliminated by these dragons, having no defense themselves against dragons. Airship did go down, I believe. ConsciouslyEating with more income as we see, but more and more income for redDain, which is good to see. And redDain decides to GG, not having the needed defense to go up against these dragons. ConsciouslyEating with that victory. Very well played by both of these players. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. Very curious to see what you guys would have done when that catapult drop was going down. And if you guys know what you would have done during that drop, maybe send your workers to kill the katas, go ahead and leave that answer down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for joining me again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.